healing, and recovery. Our special thanks to all our partners: Indian Council of Cultural Relations, BC India Business Network, Simon Fraser University, and PIO TV. And we're delighted that we are able to support our beneficiary, Cancer Patients Aid Association in India. We have esteemed panelists from all around the world joining us today, and may I warmly welcome all of them to today's panel discussion. Anne Bigging, founder and CEO of Healing Hotels of the World and co-founder of the Healing Summit, joining us from Germany. Jim Lippens, founder of Happiness at Work Conference Movement and owner of 4D Lean, joining us from Belgium. Johnny Tom Verghese, State Commissioner for Persons with Disabilities in Tamil Nadu, and also the Director of the Department of Welfare of Differently Abled, joining us from India. Toib Mohammed, joining us from, Toib Mohammed, Managing Director at Maldives Marketing and PR Corporation, Visit Maldives, joining us from Maldives. And last but not the least, Vivek Savkur, founder and president and CEO at BC India Business Network, joining us from Canada, just like me. So this is an unusual time in our lives, unprecedented times with a global pandemic. And what a gift it is to come together from different parts of the world to talk about fostering holistic wellness and recovery and pondering on leadership and leading with head and heart. So without much ado, I'm going to get us started, and we are going to be here for about an hour, and I hope that our global audience will enjoy this conversation. But before I start with Anne and our first question for today's panel discussion, I want to make sure that all of you are comfortable and happy to be here today during some very difficult times. So Anne, you have helped transform many hotels around the world, and you have started what is called the Healing Hotels. What are Healing Hotels?
First of all, I want to thank you, all of you, to allow me to be part of this wonderful panel. Can you hear me well? Is all good?
It's good. Thank you.
Okay. So yes, thank you so much for inviting me, Shobana. It's really beautiful to be with all of you here, and I think the reason, coming back to your question, why did I start Healing Hotels of the World? Because I think it was needed, never, than ever before. We started this 15 years ago, 5 years ago, and we got a lot of raised eyebrows. What are these girls from Cologne, Germany doing here? But I've been in hospitality all my life, and I saw the need for, scaling up wellness. Actually in line with my own holistic lifestyle, with my own spiritual path, or with my own development. I couldn't do what I was doing before, because it was a different N then, and I wanted to be one N, going every day to the office and doing business. So we have about 100 hotels all over the world, which are member hotels. It's a membership-based organization, and we help them to, have top qualities in the delivery of holistic programs. And obviously, there's also a promotion and a marketing arm, and lots of training and workshops. Yes, and by the way, we want to change the world, of course.
Thank you, Anne. I think no better time than now to talk about healing in different sectors, including the hospitality and travel industry. So thank you for joining us today. And Toib from Maldives today, joining us to talk about some of the challenges that we have seen during the pandemic. So Toib, we chatted a little bit about this. During the pandemic, all tourist destinations, have been terribly impacted and adversely impacted. So as a leader in the tourism space, you have immense experience. How have you dealt with the challenges, and how have you been creative and innovative in this space?
Thank you, Shobana. Thank you for all organizers and respected dignitaries here as well. When I look at the past year and a half, I see several important factors which helped us deal with the challenges we faced. I believe the most important factor that enabled our successful opening of Maldives was our unrelenting marketing efforts, which continued without a break throughout the period. Within just a few weeks after we went into lockdown, we were operating fully online with our staff working from home. Every one of our team was connected online. We established new norms for our operations within a short period of time as well. Secondly, we re-strategized to suit the new situation. We embarked on a process to develop new strategies to meet the evolving circumstances as well. We took into consideration global expert views on the course of the pandemic and developed marketing strategies for various scenarios. Because of this, we were able to incorporate a high degree of flexibility into our strategies. As important as that was our engagement with industry stakeholders at home and abroad, starting from the early stages of the lockdown. I'm sure, and we will be working together later. With the uncertainty surrounding travel, it was important that we share our views and take into consideration the views and concerns of other stakeholders so that those views could be factored into our planning. Overall, I believe our in-depth planning was the most important factor that contributed to our success. Looking at messaging during the pandemic, we applied a phased approach. We started off with our Visit Later campaign to keep Maldives at the top of people's minds. As we approach our reopening date, we launched one of our most successful marketing campaigns, Rediscover Maldives, calling potential visitors to relive their experiences in Maldives and experience the happiness and joy of being in the Maldives once again. The use of one of our key USPs, one island, one resort, and our focus on our geography as an island nation that offered relative safety to visitors have also been important factors in our successful reopening. Without doubt, safety would have been at the top of people's minds when they think of traveling, and we took that into consideration. We made sure the potential travelers were offered clear and precise information on safety measures that has been established in order to offer confidence to them. And we made sure our latest procedures for entry to Maldives were communicated very clearly so that they would know what to expect when they arrive in Maldives.
Thank you, Toib. I think at the heart of everything you said there was really flexibility. We have all through the pandemic, I think we've been challenged to be flexible and to think about new ways of doing business and, adapting to the changes that we've all been forced to come to terms with. So thank you for sharing that. I'm going to move on to Johnny. Johnny, you're a public servant. I used to be a public servant for 20 years here with the BC government. So nice to meet another fellow public servant. Generally speaking, public service is about serving people and it's about being inclusive and being committed to inclusion. You've done a lot of work in the space of differently abled people. So Johnny, however, there are many challenges we know and many barriers. How have you as a public service leader, especially during the pandemic, championed inclusion?
Thank you, Shobna, for that question. As you rightly said, in public service as administrators, we're in the job of designing systems. And by systems, I mean those systems which deliver services. Now, when you design a system, you obviously in your mind, when you start off, you think that you have designed it for everybody. But over time, you realize that there are certain categories of people who are excluded because of vulnerabilities. It could be social, economic, it could be physical, like in the case of persons with disabilities. So that is where the whole role of inclusion comes into play. That especially in a time of pandemic, in a time of disaster, when you quickly think of rolling out systems, you cannot humanly be possible to be thinking of all scenarios. So therefore, your system is vulnerable to certain bugs, as you would call it, and therefore you exclude people of certain categories who have certain nature in them. Therefore, I feel that inclusion is possible only if it does not come as an afterthought, but if it comes in the original design itself. Um, for instance, I always go with the belief that inclusion is the best design possible for any system. It could be a car, it could be a vehicle, a bridge, a social system, a health policy, anything, educational policy, is when you first uh, consider the most vulnerable, perhaps a person with disability, and then if you design it for them, it will be the best design for everybody. I would like to give a small example. During this COVID lockdown, there are people who depend on sign language to talk, to communicate, even to communicate information about COVID, etc. And people who, when they use their mask, they're not able to see, because I depend on your lip reading to be able to read what you're saying. So how do you communicate? So we distributed around roughly to 90,000 kids and their family a transparent mask, and no other government had done it. So we gave these transparent masks to children so that they could communicate. Later, at a point of time, I realized that perhaps if the transparent mask was the norm for everybody, then probably we could have been able to see people smile even during the time of COVID. Right now, during my meetings, the meetings that we conduct are the most boring of conversations we have, because I cannot see what is going through the mind or through the face of that person. So I always believe that inclusion is possible if your original design itself takes care of the person with the most vulnerability.
That's a fantastic way of framing up, sort of what's the essence, right? An afterthought versus something being the original design. And that's such a fantastic segue to actually a question that I have in mind for Jim. Jim, as humans, all of us aspire for happiness. And but when it comes to organizations and when it comes to workplace, does happiness have a place per se as a goal and an aspiration for a company? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm 100% convinced that there's a need for the employees and the companies to pay attention to happiness. It's clear that happier employees are bringing more profit, safety, innovative ideas, whatever. All the positive things that can happen in a company are often or more there the moment that employees are happy. Now, for me, I don't really care if they are doing it with the other purpose, like the profit in mind, or if they are doing it really to help these people to become more happy. The fact is, the moment that we spend attention to our employees, then all parties become better of it. So, but it's not that easy. So I worked 20 years in production environment, and for sure there it's not that easy for a company to bring in these happiness, because how it works. And for me, it's rather simple. It's just like in a relation. Everything starts with trust. Everything starts with respect. Then you try to build like a relation with your employees. You're looking what do they like, and then you go to phase like to be more vulnerable, to connect with your people, and that all leads to more happiness. Another important factor is like people really want to do something for themselves, like they want to realize something. So self-realization, it's another factor that companies really should promote in their company, because that will lead to innovation, that will lead to self-management, that will bring the best out of people, and that is also a main component for happiness. But we have also like the emotional part, like appreciation, like affection, even. And what we see is that, yeah, the more emotional interference we ask from the companies, the more difficult it becomes. But for sure, there is a place for happiness at work. But for me, I think it's not as easy to implement it as personal happiness, because you are dependent on, yeah, your boss or the company where you're working for, and that is, yeah, why we are there for happiness at work.
Thank you for that. It's always refreshing to hear someone who's been in the corporate space and who's now working with or organizations to use words like affection and happiness, because it's so interesting how our personal and professional lives have gotten quite disconnected or siloed, and we feel that something is okay to pursue in our personal life, but not necessarily, in our professional life. So I think from what you have just shared, bringing it together, aligning it, and connecting it, brings out the best in people and in best in organizations. So thank you so much for that. Round one's last question is for Vivekji. Both Vivekji and I are actually just a few kilometers away from each other here in Vancouver. So really good to see you. And we've talked a lot in the work that we do with BCIBN that collaboration and cooperation is so critical, not just for human survival, but for countries and organizations to do well. I'd just like you to share how you and BCIBN have helped, especially during the pandemic, two countries, Canada and India, to come together to be stronger and closer. We're lovely to hear from you, Vivekji.
I bring greetings from beautiful British Columbia to my fellow panelists, our international audience, to Anubhuti Sharma, who I saw for the first time today, the founder of this organization, and a very good morning to my colleague and series moderator, Shobna Madhavan, not forgetting my good old friend Manish Gupta from Delhi. Thank you very much, Shobna, for your question, and I wish to inform everybody that I have an Indo-Canadian background, and therefore will be speaking in that context. A tiny minuscule virus has brought the whole world to its knees. The world is still reeling and struggling to get over this scourge. It has ruined the economies and social fabric of developed nations and destroyed smaller, underdeveloped countries. It is today a matter of survival. About 17 months have passed with only partial success and not knowing when the pandemic will raise its ugly head again. Today, without collaboration or cooperation in a country or between two countries, it is difficult for any nation to survive. The pandemic has amply proved this point. Enemy countries have come closer to each other, have offered aid to each other, and are today talking in a friendly manner internationally. This is the essence and wonder of collaborating and cooperating. The world has realized that this battle cannot be fought alone. Collaboration and cooperation are the answer to all ills, not just in tackling COVID, but also in the development of trade, commerce, art, culture. Cooperation and collaboration are critical for survival and uplifting of economies internationally. 1.6 million people of Indian heritage, 700,000 people holding Indian passports, including 230,000 students from India, currently live in Canada. India, the biggest producer of vaccines in the world, came to Canada's rescue by supplying large quantities of vaccines at a short notice at a time when India itself needed them. This is a great sacrifice and a display of large-heartedness and cooperation by India with Canada. This act by India strengthened the slightly strained relations which India and Canada had, very minor, of course. Canada, in turn, rushed timely aid when the pandemic went out of control in India. Canada made huge investments in India to the tune of $60 billion for the development of the nation and the communities there. BCIBN was not actively involved in this act of cooperation, but this is a shining example of collaboration and cooperation which saved the lives of thousands and by generating employment and creating new opportunities. BCIBN, however, reached out and extended its support to India by spreading the word through seminars, virtual conferences, personal interactions, and delegations, and inviting delegations from India to Canada and entertaining them and showing them around and educating them on the possibilities of international trade and trade with India. India and Canada are now collaborating in the post-pandemic economic recovery program in the medical and economic sectors, which is a very great thing. The two prime ministers of our two countries have been in touch with each other. Diplomats are doing their job, bureaucrats are doing their job, and I think we are heading in a fantastic direction. The process continues even today. The government of BC province, where we live, beautiful British Columbia, is supporting us greatly. Any businessman in BC requiring commercial information or partnership in India is facilitated through us by the introductions that we give. Even if the end buyer in India is located in a remote part, India is very vast, but anybody in Canada can get in touch with anybody in India. We facilitate that. Talk through a network. We have developed an intricate network by collaborating with our counterparts in India and vice versa. The High Commissioner of India in Canada and the Consul General of India in Canada, with whom we work very closely, have always cooperated and extended total support to BCIBN initiatives. Just to give you going a bit off track and giving another example, I also wish to mention that the government of Australia sent a big team of firefighters to fight 250 fires which are raging all over British Columbia, over several hundred of square kilometers, where one town was completely destroyed and many homes and other pockets have been completely burnt and wiped off. There has been a lot of loss of life and also property. Flora and fauna and human lives were lost. Fires are still raging as we speak. But it is the Australians who have come here to help us, to collaborate and cooperate with us for survival and putting out the fires and helping out the people in these areas. This is a shining example of collaboration and cooperation between two countries in the service and survival of humanity. BCIBN has played an important role in BC-India Business Corridor by bridging the gap and creating awareness in India of Canadian products, Canadian super technology, and expertise. International businesses can succeed only by creating a business network. We cannot and do not work in isolation, but in collaboration and cooperation with other business and trade councils. We have a network with the World Trade Center, with the Indian Merchants Chamber, with the Indian Association of Industries, and such other trade councils all over India, as well as within Canada itself. We do not compete. We collaborate and cooperate, and thereby enhancing business and trade between India and Canada, creating new opportunities for communities of both the countries. Over to you, Shobna.
Yeah, thank you, Vivekji. I think, what you've shared here has highlighted a number of things, including the interdependency and the importance of, if at all there is competition, it needs to be a friendly competition, because cooperation and collaboration is definitely the need of the day. And thank you for mentioning the fires in British Columbia, because we now have seen the devastation of floods in Europe and other calamities around the world. And the pandemic has just highlighted how, as a human race, our species cannot survive unless and until we actually care about each other and we actually pool our resources and support one another. I'd like to go back to Anne and just have you take us down, memory lane a little bit, but ponder on how over the years you have transformed from being a corporate career woman to someone who cares deeply about healing. in all spheres of life. When I met you in Delhi a couple of years ago for the Women's Economic Forum, I remember us talking about how business leaders need to care about healing. Could you talk a little bit more about it, Anne?
Yes, thank you so much. Actually, I want to go back to the healing hotels because I didn't answer your question properly. I just realized, you know, we just heard about interdependency. You know, we heard about collaboration versus or friendly competition, at least. And I think healing hotels of the world, all these properties are working with one another. You know, these are properties where people go to heal. It's not a wellness, just a wellness place. It's where people come to heal and learn how to love themselves and learn how to heal from the inside, from the soul's perspective. And in this way, going, you know, back into the world with a different understanding about who they are as human beings and what that can create in the world. This is really our core purpose, you know, to help people to find their core values and then help making the world a better place. So thank you for adding me for adding this. I actually was never a corporate person. I've always been doing, I've always had my own business, but I was working, I was as a servant, so to speak. Today, looking back, I would call it almost a modern slavery, because I think I thought I need a big brother, you know, where I can serve and bring my talents to, you know, serving governments as a tourism advisor. You know, many India, Australia, in the United States, I became less and less interested because I actually became very cold in my soul, and that was a moment when I only had one choice, and that was to really live what I believe in, live my purpose. That was a very it's a fearful moment, you know, because you think you are safe in what you're doing, safe in your own little prison, so to speak. But with the understanding, you know, going hand in hand with my studies of the Indian scriptures. I mean, I'm speaking to, I think, mostly Indian audience here, and I want to thank you all, because what I know now, I learned in India, or from India, from the scriptures. That's the truth. So I discovered that I've always tried to be as logical as the others in the business world. I tried to copy them, as a woman copy the man, blah blah blah, you know, all of that. But it wasn't really working for me. And only in India, when we found, like the Ananda in Himalayas, when we were there, my partner and I, and we saw how it can happen that you have a luxury property, a luxury hotel, which is filled with holistic spiritual practices. I thought this warms my soul, and I can actually be Anne. I can be me, doing what was bringing in my talents and my skills, because I can't, you know, I believe the series is between the head and the heart, right? So what is between the head and the heart? I think it's a battle between the soul and the ego. So I get lost in my ego world, but I warm up in my soul world, and that was really showing me the way. Understanding, you know, I listened to all of you and showing me the way, what is service really, what is leadership to me. And I understood through my studies of the Vedanta, other Indian scriptures, that leadership is service, it's serving. And that's not an easy job, you know, to always make this connection between the head and the heart, to make sure, you know, find your own resonance in your soul, that you never lose your values, but you stick to your values the moment you execute in your organization, the moment you work with all these clients all around the world, with all these different cultures. The moment I stay true to who I am, to my own truth, then I don't fail. The moment fear kicks in, / ego world, I lose it. And yeah, so it was a long journey. It's not ended. I think it will never end as long as I live. And And I want to really also take that moment to encourage everyone, to never, ever give up your dreams. Never, ever give up that place where you feel at home just for career or making money. It's not working. I hope I answered your question, my friend.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And there was so much depth in that reflection. And I just loved how you talked about, sort of getting lost in that ego and, trying to bring back yourself to that soul space and living with purpose. Living with purpose is a topic that we've all, I think, pondered on quite a bit. And I'm going to ask Jim to answer the next question, because Jim and I had a conversation the other day about how important it is for organizations to really stop and think about what they're doing. So, Jim, according to recent studies, large numbers of employees all around the world are contemplating resigning, or retiring and just leaving their companies or the workspaces. And do you think that there is no better time than now for organizations and leaders to really pause and think about the purpose of work and the place of happiness in these organizations? What would you say to leaders who are now grappling with the reality that many of the staff are not going to come back post-COVID?
Yeah, that's a fact that a lot of people, due to it, they saw something. They saw what was happening. They saw mainly their need to slow down. They saw the need of affection. They saw the need of balance, personal time, and so on. And what happened? A lot of companies were forced, because they did not like it. In a lot of cases, they did not like to have the people at home, because they were losing control on these people the moment that they were working at home. But that is one of the main reasons. 50% of the employees are telling now, the moment that we are not allowed to work from home anymore, then we will leave the company. So that's one of the facts that are really clear. When you give something to people and later on, they get used to it and you take it away again, yeah, that's not easy. When you know then that there's already a gap between employers and employees, and that this gap is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, because the generations that are coming up now, millennials, Generation Z, they are all moving towards more consciousness, toward more letting go, trust, free time, being themselves. And if companies are not following, are so conscious that they say, okay, we don't take this anymore. So if you don't change, we just change. And that means we leave the company. So yeah, in fact, for the companies, if they will start losing their best employees, then maybe they will start understanding that happiness and balance at work is really what it's all about.
Thank you for that, Jim. I think the theme that is beginning to emerge in this cross-cultural global dialogue is two things: consciousness at an individual, organizational, and a societal level. And the second one, the place for balance, the importance of balance in our lives. That's become a huge, priority. I'm just curious what Thoib has to say with regards to the tourism space, having to evolve post COVID. What would your message, Thoib, be to those managing tourist destinations around the world and worried about post-pandemic recovery, because nothing is going to remain the same now? But a lot of people have been impacted, especially economically, and now they're trying to revive and come back. What would your message be to, say, leaders in the tourism space? How can they lead with the head and heart in the post-pandemic recovery world?
I actually like what the last speaker had said. It's happiness and balance of work, I think. And of course, flexibility are the keywords here tonight. And I would like to say that different destinations would face different types of challenges in opening up for travel and post-pandemic recovery. The circumstances in the Maldives may be really different from that of any other country. So what we have done in the Maldives may not be applicable for other destinations. However, there are some common factors that would apply to all of us. First, I think it's important to note that in the tourism sector, what we are experiencing today is an outcome of a pandemic. It is a public health crisis. For post-pandemic recovery, we need to ensure that the pandemic itself is under control. That is not something that the tourism sector can do in any country. If I look at the efforts in the Maldives, what we have seen is an all government effort to curb the pandemic and mitigate its effects on the economy, including the tourism sector. As I say this, it's together with the tourism or the private sector as well. With the COVID-19 pandemic, there was this sense of fear around the world, especially during the initial period of the crisis. People feared being exposed to others. Countries wanted to protect their populations, minimize imported cases. So when the citizens are allowed to travel, they look at destinations that are relatively safe. Next, it is the health and safety measures taken by destinations and how well they were adhered to. How well this is communicated to potential travelers would also play a key role in determining the level of success in the journey to recovery. The pandemic shut down travel around the globe, but it did not shut down communications and engagement. I believe that too is a key element. Engagement with the general audience in source markets, travel industry stakeholders around the world is key to keeping the flame alive and the destination in everyone's sight. In fact, opportunities for engagement with local and international industry stakeholders increased during the global lockdown. This is very important and certainly true in our case. We learned that adaptation is crucial in times of crisis. Destinations can develop new strategies to suit their circumstances when based on their strengths. We cannot continue with the same messaging and same strategies as before. In the Maldives, we focus on adapting our marketing tools, platforms, activities, and messaging in line with changing conditions around the globe and in various source markets. So as a destination dependent on tourism, it was essential for us to find ways to adapt to the changing situation as well.
Thank you for that, Toib. And I think, while you've talked sort of, given us the big picture about Maldives tourism and the amount of adaptation and flexibility that was needed, adaptation, that one word, I think, is something that all leaders are really sort of grappling with. They know they've adapted to get through the pandemic, but I think where they're struggling is, what should they do post-pandemic, right? Do they continue to engage with their staff in a way that requires a high deal of adaptation, or do they go back to business as usual and try to maintain the old status quo, right? But I like the fact that you touched on engagement with the locals, engagement with people who your organization touches. And so the next question is actually to Vivekji, because community engagement is a big part of, I know, your life. And we've talked a little bit in past years about the importance of business leaders being, engaged with their communities and being engaged in community service. So could you share your thoughts about the importance of business leaders, community engagement, and community services, Vivekji?
Community service has a very wide connotation. It is too wide a subject. It entails spending a lot of voluntary time working and developing activities for the benefit of communities, the needy and the underprivileged. Empathy, sympathy, and united actions at the highest level are the need of the hour. It requires funding and financial support, which many not-for-profit organizations have. We have to do whatever we can with limited resources. BCIBN is a not-for-profit organization which is member-driven with the objective of developing and promoting trade, business, as well as art, culture, and social relations between BC and India. It was created to serve the community and the Indo-Canadian diaspora. BCIBN members devote time and volunteer not only to develop business relations, but also to help and assist in the uplift of masses and the underprivileged. For example, we provide food and clothing to those in dire need during this pandemic and assist in giving financial support to students for needy students for education and other forms of help as needed. These are our objectives also. All these activities require funding, which we try to tap from business organizations. Big organizations have the CSR or the corporate social responsibility, and huge funds are available with them, but we do not have any access to them. We have problems in raising finances. Therefore, our efforts are quite limited. We raise funds through programs, events, and in various other ways, and help the Asian diaspora to keep alive our multiculturalism, our Indian heritage and traditions in BC. We pay attention not just to trade and commerce, but also to satisfy the needs of the Indian diaspora with non-business community services. Our activities are limited to finances we generate. To give a few examples of a community engagement, we lay a lot of stress on environment and environment issues. Our province, beautiful British Columbia, as it's known as all over the world, and perhaps Vancouver is one of the most beautiful cities in the world, we face a lot of environmental challenges. The one which we are facing today, the biggest one, is the fires which are raging all over British Columbia. About 250 fires are raging today, and there's a tremendous loss of life, and a lot of community support is required. So this has been caused by extreme heat, hot conditions. The temperatures have risen here to an unbelievable 38, 39 degrees centigrade, which we hardly find in India itself. In this cold climate, to have such horrible hot temperatures is mainly due to the climate change, and efforts are being made to make people aware of the dangers of this climate change and the precautions to be taken. So to solve this problem or to sort of bring a healing to this kind of condition, we had invited a leading environmentalist group, internationally famous, to provide the information and the dangers of climate change through music. 6 international Grammy Award a year. They made the people aware of the dangers of climate change to flora, fauna, and to every human being, and countries and provinces through music, audio, and video. I think it was a tremendous success. We hope to have such programs again in future, because it's a very novel way of educating people on the hazards of environmental issues. During the pandemic, our members also opened a community kitchen, and we provide free food as far as possible, as much as possible, as often as possible to the underprivileged and those affected by the pandemic. This also depends on the amount of funding. We don't do it in a big way because we don't have the funds. But whatever it is, every little helps. Few years ago, we provided entertainment to our South Asian community. We have a huge South Asian diaspora here, big population in British Columbia, and all of them are crazy for Bollywood. Now, people say that, well, Bollywood is not community service. I say, of course it is community service, because about 38,000 people attended the event, because of which BC received wide publicity all over the world for 6 months through our promoters, the Times of India group. Every day for about 6 months, they published and they showed the videos of the Times of India Film Awards, which we had. It went viral, went all over the world for months together, resulting in a large amount of tourists coming into British Columbia from India, the travel time between India and British Columbia those days was tremendous. It took about 48 hours to reach Vancouver, and people were deterred from coming here as tourists. But we also advocated direct flights to India between Vancouver and Delhi. We are now advocating for direct flights from Vancouver to Mumbai. Now, because of all this, the community benefited. Investors came here, tourists came here, the hospitality industry developed, so many other sectors improved, developed, there were new businesses opening. This, in turn, the entertainment served the community by creating a lot of employment and also economic recovery. This was the other advantage which we are very proud of, actually.
Vivekji, I'm going to unfortunately have to move to our final question to Johnny, just because we have a hard stop. So thank you so much for sharing some of your thoughts on the importance of community service.
Thank you.
And so, Johnny, we've talked a little bit about the importance of leading with head and heart for a better world. And what changes do you think, as a public service leader, what changes do you think are needed to lead and support the public in a better way moving forward post-pandemic? Johnny, do you mind unmuting yourself? Thank you.
Yeah. Like the earlier speakers were saying, the wellness is a combination of head and heart. I do not know in what order it is, but it's kind of a cycle for me. Matters of head, it's already the rules, it makes economic sense. So you go ahead, do it. Matters of the head. But matters of the heart are more difficult to implement. I'm sure that the moment you go with something that inspires you, there's a voice behind you saying that this is the right thing to do. And then there are so many difficulties on the path because people discourage you, saying that you're too emotional, it doesn't make economic sense, etc. Very difficult to convince. So I think the change is for people who go with their heart to realize that it requires more head for a matter of head than for a matter of heart than for a matter of head. You need to think more. You need to convince people that it takes economic sense. So or it makes sense as a business idea. It makes sense to do. You have to convince people in better ways and more ways. Only then you can go forward with that which has appealed to you in your heart. So I think head and heart goes together. I think for matters of heart, you require more head than ever because there are no rules for it, and you have to innovate. You have to keep moving forward to convince the decision makers and move ahead.
Thank you for that, Johnny. It's a good reminder for all of us. Matters of the heart requires more head, and it's actually tough work, isn't it? Thank you so much for that. This is one of the nicest moments in the entire program. We've had such a great conversation. I'm sure our global audience also have appreciated your insights and reflections. All of this is possible because of an organization called Impresario Global and the amazing founder, Anubhuti Sharma. So I'm going to invite Anu to join us and share some thoughts and let us know what you're thinking, Anu.
Thank you, Shobna. First up, I want to congratulate all of viewers from India and across the globe for striking gold today at the Tokyo Olympics. Congratulations, everyone. Neeraj Chopra said at the start of the championship that the game is more of a mental state. But I think his heart thumped just as hard with every throw. Striking a gold, what a way to position ourselves as cause amplifiers of sports. So that's where I wanted to start. In the same breath, I want to, extend my heartfelt gratitude to the Indian Council of Cultural Relations for joining us as our newest cause amplifiers for the campaign that squarely is aimed towards a better world and a better humanity. This campaign espouses to support Cancer Patients Aid Association, an organization based out of Mumbai. And this is Impresario Global's little effort, towards bringing them any support that we can towards people who are battling the dual burden of cancer and COVID at the same time. I just want to, take a very little time, but mean it deeply in thanking all our speakers today. Anne, Jim, I'm a deep admirer of all the work that you're doing in your nations. Thoib, it's a pleasure to have you here as well. Vivek ji, thank you so much. First time I'm seeing you as well in person, but what a great joy. Johnny, a dear friend, one of the kindest people that I've known in my life. Thank you, Johnny. I also want to thank all our partners, specifically Simon Fraser University and Shobna for moderating the entire series so gracefully. Munish Gupta and PIO TV for this, for the relentless cooperation and supporting IM, despite us being new and, just trying a bit to do whatever we can for people through the pandemic. I also want to take a moment to thank Anil ji, who's a technician, and also Akansha Sisodia, who's been working very hard for bringing creative life to the series. Thank you. Shobna, over to you.
Thank you so much, Anu. A huge shout out to you, and thrilled that we could do this together. We are coming to the end of this wonderful event, and so I'm going to ask all our panelists joining us from around the world to take 30 seconds or less to share some concluding thoughts. Thoib? If you could please unmute, thank you. Thoib, are you able to unmute? Thank you.
Can I get to the next? I'm having some problems here. Yeah.
No worries at all. Jim, some concluding thoughts, 30 seconds, please.
Yes, it's wonderful to see the similarities between all the speakers. From my side, I was an engineer. What I saw was I went from head to heart, and I hope that a lot of other people in the world just give the heart a little bit more chance. That's my final thought.
Wonderful. Anne?
Oh, yes, of course, I can hone in Jim's, my neighbor from Belgium. I hear you, Johnny, about the heart, and that's what I heard all my life. What I mean is not the emotions when I talk about the heart. I talk about the truth, and I know, again, the wisdom of a heart. That's what I'm talking about. And if we're connected to that wisdom, we give the right impulse to our thought system to make clear and pure decisions. And that moment means we are connected with the head and the heart. Thank you.
Thank you for that. It's just wonderful to see this congruence and alignment between all of us here. Delighted. Vivekji, 30 seconds, please. Concluding remarks.
Yeah, in one sentence, head and heart is equal to empathy, sympathy, and united actions from all of us internationally. Thank you.
Love that. United action, isn't it? Thoib?
Wow.
Yeah, I hope, yeah, with the pandemic, not everything for humanity is negative. We are seeing some things that could be taken positively as well. We are realizing how vulnerable the whole world was and is. It's a microvirus who has changed the world and still is suffering. So I think it's smaller things that has opened up our eyes. And of course, in our workplaces, healing, effective happiness, and balancing the work is very important as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Last but not the least, Johnny.
Thank you. For a better world and for wellness, I think that we've got to be better than before, smarter than before, and also wiser than before, like Anne was saying. And I wish all the best to all the champions out there for this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This has been such a rich conversation. And if we had another hour, we could just dissect this conversation and go deeper. But unfortunately, we're coming to the end of the program and we have a wonderful video to watch. This has been amazing on many fronts. But I think what has been great here to see is leaders like yourself really unapologetically emphasizing the importance of empathy, of purpose, of adapting, of being flexible, of not being ashamed to realize that working with our heads and heart is the real good way of working. And it can bring so much, to the world and make the world truly a better place. All of us are going to have to change the way we think about ourselves. We've got to revisit our souls and see what our purpose is. And as leaders, we've got to be daring to have the conversations we need to have to transform our organizations, where leading with the head and heart is the way forward. So it's my great pleasure to have been your moderator today. I want to thank our audience, our partners, and all of you panelists for joining us on this Saturday. And in lieu of registration, many of you have made a commitment to support the Cancer Patients Aid Association that is in dire need of resources to support children who are impacted by both cancer and with COVID. We greatly appreciate your time today, your commitment for a better world. I'm going to pass on the baton to our wonderful tech lead, Anil Yadav, to show us a video from Bollywood actor Vivek Oberoi. Thank you, everyone. Take care. It's been a pleasure.
Know that people with comorbidities are at a high risk of getting COVID-19. Their immunity is seriously compromised. Imagine the condition of underprivileged children fighting cancer. The poor parents have sold everything they own and yet can't afford the treatment. Forget treatment. They can't even afford to provide basic daily nutrition to their child. Imagine living in that hunger and constant fear of death. I had this heartfelt need to do something to help these children somehow. So Cancer Patients Aid Association and I have pledged to save 3,000 such high-risk underprivileged children who are fighting cancer. I request you all to join us in pledging your support to Cancer Patients Aid Association through the Emerging from COVID-19 campaign, a cross-cultural dialogue series led by thought leaders from across the world, coming together to talk about holistic wellness and recovery in a world shaken by the pandemic. You can join us from anywhere in the world on your device. In lieu of the registration, I urge you to just consider for a moment that just 1,000 rupees or $15 can get comprehensive nutrition for an underprivileged child fighting cancer for an entire month. That's right. Only $15 a month can build their immunity to survive this dark and scary time. Now let us all unite to emerge from this together. Let us show love and compassion. Let us be empathetic. Let us collaborate for a better world.
We bring you daily glimpses of the changing India and India's engagement with its nearly 40 million affluent and influential diaspora.